Joining me live on the broadcast is a very special guest to speak on what the future of this meeting and the hope that has been expressed by Donald Trump and Zelensky looks like. Now, joining me live on the telecast is Mr. Robert Bob Lancia, who is an American politician and a former state representative. Thank you, sir, joining me live, and also, in fact, appreciate you joining me live this morning. Now, we see the developments happening, which was in a much anticipated move. And of course, as we start the discussion about what could potentially lead this to, my first question to you would be, in fact, as you see that the hope has been expressed from both the sides for a sit down of a trilateral meeting, what are your very fresh expectations from this effort that has taken place at the White House? Is this going to ease or bring some relief to the world that is watching the developments, and especially with the Russian oil threat that has come from the White House recently?
Well, one of the things that concerns me is from the beginning, when Ukraine was invaded, Crimea specifically under the Obama administration, the United States did nothing. They let him take Crimea. And that gave Putin the impetus to say, let's do some more, let's go further. And of course, started a formal war with Ukraine. And at that time, what I don't understand is why all the European nations at the time, I guess Biden would be president at the time, they didn't all gather together. And, President Trump talked about possibly doing crushing sanctions if, Putin wouldn't agree to ceasefire or peace deal. But that was never done. I mean, if that had been done from the beginning, from Obama, or even with Biden, and now with Trump, said quite a few things. But let's be clear, Putin is an international war criminal. I mean, any opposition in his country, he has crushed it. He's taken, billionaires in his own country, opponents, and he's imprisoned them, and ultimately they've been killed while in prison. People that have criticized him that have left the country. Got that gentleman and his daughter in London who were poisoned while they were eating. They were going to kidnap a Ukrainian, destroy his business. This kind of stuff, they let him do all this, and then he allows him to come onto American soil where he should have been arrested as an international terrorist. Now he's saying, Ukraine's got to give up a certain amount of territory. They got to do this, that. He's kidnapped Ukrainian children. He's killed what? This 400,000 Ukrainians have been killed. They've done nothing. They're just living their lives and trying to run their country. What Putin has been allowed to do, and now to possibly benefit, I have a real problem with that.
But we also have to understand about the entire ecosystem that is being maintained right now. Following the bilateral meeting that was held between the US President Donald Trump and Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky, there is a statement that has come from the White House. US President Donald Trump has said, and let me quote it, that we are going to work with Ukraine. We are going to work with everybody. We are going to make sure that if there is peace, peace is going to stay long term. This is very long term, and we are not talking about 2-year peace and then we end up in mess again, unquote. President Trump has further iterated that the US is going to make sure that a peace deal is brokered, and it will be for a long lasting peace. Now, sir, as we see that the statement has come in a very freshly made note, what sense do you make of this? Is this also assertive enough to understand that Donald Trump is right now pushing hard for the effort to be, in fact, identified as a good peacemaker, given that there was no agreement when the meeting with the Putin has taken place?
Well, my question would be, at what cost? That, for me, is the question. What will the cost be? Will it be Ukraine giving up 20% of its country? Will it be them saying they're giving up a claim to Crimea? That's the thing that that bothers me. And let's be clear. What did President Trump do with India? He's imposed 25% tariffs. He told India to stop buying oil from Putin. And so he's put sanctions on India for doing that. But other countries are doing the similar things. And did President Trump put sanctions on them? No, he didn't. He seems to be picking and choosing, his spots. But again, the question is, at what cost? And, he wasn't going to give, he paused weapons to Ukraine. Then he decides, Putin isn't being an honest broker, so he's going to give Ukraine the weapons back. That's the question. It really is the question. At what cost is this peace going to take place, if at all?
And in that case, if at all the trilateral does not seem to yield a result as on the expected lines, as European leaders are also in Washington right now, what is that you see as a aftermath of this failure of the trilateral that will take place?
Well, I think from the beginning, again, President Trump was talking about if Putin didn't come to the table and agree to a ceasefire, he was going to put punishing sanctions. Punishing sanctions should have happened the day that Russia invaded Crimea from all the European nations. I mean, they basically they mollycoddled him and allowed him to do whatever he wanted to do until we've gotten to this point. I mean, the destruction of Ukraine. And who's going to pay for the rebuilding of Ukraine? There's hundreds of billions of dollars that the United States has in its banks from Russia. I mean, he's not talking about seizing those assets to rebuild Ukraine. I mean, this has been so poorly handled, first by Obama, then by Biden. And I'm sorry, I'm not happy with the response of Trump at this point. He plays friend to Putin. He puts Zelenskyy at arm's length. Then he kind of allows Zelenskyy back, into the fold a little bit. I just don't care how he's handled it. He's treated Ukraine, I think, very badly, and I'm sorry. Russia, now Putin says, oh, we'd love to have you come and visit Moscow. This is not a normal situation. This is an international criminal, war criminal, and he needs to be held accountable, and no one's going to hold him accountable. They're going to let him, I think, dictate peace terms, and it's making me sick. It really is.
Sir, before I let you go, there is also, in fact, one aspect to it of the war that has been taking place, as a statement that has come from the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio over the China, saying that China buying Russian oil is good for economy. So how do you look at it, given the fact that Trump has imposed tariffs on India for buying the oil from Russia?
Well, that's the point, isn't it? I mean, it's okay for China, but it's not okay for India. It just doesn't make any sense. That's my point, my earlier point. Some of the things he's saying, some of the things he's doing does not make sense. Why punish India? United States backed Pakistan back in the day rather than India. India wound up having to buy their military hardware from Russia, and they're buying oil. And the foreign minister for India said, India's going to do what's best for India. And I don't see why they shouldn't. There's some work that needs to be done to patch up things, I think, between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump. That's got to be. I mean, India, largest democracy in the world. I mean, a world power for sure. They don't even sit on the Security Council. Why isn't Donald Trump, advocating for India to be sitting on the Security Council, for instance, and play a part in these talks? He's not inviting India, and I think India needs to be invited. So, that bothers me as well.
On that note, I would also like to ask you about that. How do you look at the statements, rather the big announcement by Donald Trump over the imposition of additional tariffs against India? Do you think that was a good move, given the relations with India and the US have been very, in a historic manner, have been long celebrated as well?
Yeah, I am upset about it. I think, again, I think he handled it very badly. In his first term, I mean, we had Prime Minister Modi come to the United States, to Houston, Texas, and Howdy Modi, and President Trump visited India. I mean, it looked like the beginning of a great friendship, a great partnership, but I haven't seen that so far in his second term. And that bothers me, because I think India, especially in the Asian theater, with China threatening to possibly invade Taiwan, with China, building up their navy, and Philippines is worried. A lot of the Asian nations are worried about China. What is President Trump's response to that? He should be partnering up right now with India to do those things, and I don't see it happening. And I
And
think
if
it's a
a
mistake
right
at this
note
point.
has not been struck with India in the second term of the US President Donald Trump, why exactly do you think that must have happened, or maybe deliberately even positioned that way?
I think Donald Trump has not paid attention to India during his second term. He's been focused on other things, domestic policy, all kinds of things. But look what's going on in Bangladesh right now. Look what's going on Pakistan with Balochistan and Sid. I mean, he's not addressing any of that. I mean, even Gaza. I mean, the Gazan people are literally, it's a humanitarian crisis. And what is he doing about it? He mentioned a couple weeks ago, there might be a humanitarian crisis going on in Gaza. Really? Have you seen the news? Have you seen children laying on a bed, skeletons, hair falling out? I mean, something needs to be done. I mean, they're starving people to death. I mean, so he's up for a Nobel Peace Prize, right? He's got some work to do in some of these other areas before I think he's ready to be considered for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Do you also think that he is in fact in this entire system where he's trying to push for a very quick breakthrough in the Ukraine war, trying that way to make his probable points for the Nobel Peace Prize?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, look at these other areas. Look what Pakistan again is doing to Balochistan. Look what's going on in Bangladesh. Again, Sid, some of these areas. Dr. Marang Balak in Pakistan, she was one of Times 100 top people. He hasn't mentioned a word about her. I mean, she was not allowed to fly to the United States as part of this Times top 100 people, and now she's imprisoned. President Trump hasn't mentioned her at all, which I found outrageous.